This week I received an email wanting some clarification associated with how does a warm-up improve biomechanics? Doesn't matter what sport you're involved with, how does a warm-up influence biomechanics? Well, before we go into how does a warm-up influence biomechanics, I want you to realize that the human body is wired in a way that we will always seek out, not intentionally, but the body will always gravitate towards the path of least resistance. So if you think about a runner, an efficient runner has what we call the falling forward position. If you pause the video camera, you'll see over their chin has a tendency to go right through. If you dropped a plumb line, it'd be head, right through the knees, right to their midfoot placement when it hits the ground. As we become tired, the body naturally lets the shoulders come back, hips will tuck underneath you, and you find yourself landing heel first instead of midfoot. And you can imagine the heel is like hitting an e-brake, where hitting midfoot is like hitting the accelerator. You're maintaining momentum. So keep that in mind. The body, when given a chance, is always going to go the route of least resistance, which unfortunately is atrocious for sport-specific biomechanics, regardless of your sport. Now, when we come into the warm-up, we want to go back to the subject that we've discussed in numerous videos. Think about the hierarchy of skin, fascia, body fat, muscle. Think about those layers. Well, as those muscles are sitting idle, notice I said muscles, the lowest, right? The core of each limb, if you will, dead center of your back, all the big muscle groups. When we get the muscle tissue warmed up, we start to get the muscles sliding and gliding between the fascia and the skin. So the easiest way I can illustrate it is if you're getting ready to do your sport and I'm holding on to your, let's just say you've got a jersey on and I'm holding on to your jersey, t-shirt, whatever you're wearing. If I'm holding on to that and you're trying to accelerate and you're trying to maintain that, you're trying to decelerate and I'm still holding on to you. Think about the extra induced resistance and the extra internal body heat. What does heat do to the body? Robs it of outright power and endurance. So do you see how a warm-up, let me digress for just a moment. A warm-up is going to send a neuromuscular communication to the rest of the body that there's a demand for oxygen. The blood vessels open up because the friction associated with muscular movement. That's why we always say your warm-up should be sport specific. So you start sending the right communications through all systems to say, hey, I'm going to be running, I'm going to be using my legs a lot more, arms are going to be moving, I'm going to be swimming and I'm doing all 4 strokes. Every muscle from fingertips to toenails are going to be engaged. Those muscles create friction, the blood vessels open up, nutrient-rich blood goes in there, and now you've got the slide and glide process in full effect. Now we're going to make a little side note and an assumption here that you're properly hydrated. You know how much to consume on a daily basis to stay properly hydrated. You know how much you sweat. You know what your replenishment of that is. That keeps you from becoming either dehydrated or overhydrated, a condition known as hyponatremia. We don't need that. That's literally deadly. We're going to make sure, or we're going to make an assumption rather, that those 2 boxes are checked off. But when you're looking at improving your biomechanics, do everything you can not to bypass that warm-up, because you get the sliding and the gliding effect. You get just a natural increase in the body's core temperature, and your productivity, whether it be you're working on speed or endurance or raw power, you're going to be way more productive just by activating that slide and glide format, or the slider glide concept, and making sure that you don't try to resist that. I say this every time I do a public presentation. I didn't create physiology, so what my goal and responsibility is to make sure that you understand the principles of it, because if you try to argue with the laws of physics and the law of physiology against the principles of nutrition, we're simply going to lose. So the sooner that we embrace it, the further we're going to go in a shorter period of time. Great question. The number of questions continue to escalate. The number of subscribers continues to go up on the channel, and I want to say a big thanks to that. This channel is all about you guys. It's about answering your questions. It's about answering and debunking some of the misinformation that's floating around out there on the World Wide Web. If you haven't subscribed, please do so and turn on the notifications. We're putting out a new video every day, and we're answering your questions, as I mentioned. If you happen to have one, please feel free to send it in to us, and you can do that by sending it to contact@coachrob.com. Thank you for taking precious time out of your day to watch this, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning.